passing lane, deflect the ball, dribble it down to the three-point line, and take a shot.
No timeouts for the Wizards. A 5-second call. Oh, my goodness. The Clippers walking between raindrops. Can they make the most out of getting a little lucky? Winslow with 5 to shoot, gives to Kennard. The 3 for the tie. Oh, my goodness. I don't believe what I have seen. We are tied at 115. Luke Kennard put the Clippers on top for the first time tonight. Oh, my goodness. Hot damn. Harrell with the grab off his hands and out of bounds.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Ref the District, where today we're going to be trashing the Washington Wizards, a team we love and love to hate right now, because as you watch that opening clip there, they just let a 35-point lead evaporate. If you were watching the game at halftime, on NBC Washington, they showed a graphic where they were 5-point favorites. They've turned into 25 and a half point favorites at halftime. Astronomical odds. You bet money line on the Clippers. You would, if you put just $100 on them, you're paying off bills for days. Unfortunately, Wizards going to whiz, just like all Washington teams do. We're going to talk about that and how Washington can fix it. My personal opinion, Nathan speaking here. Trade them all. Of course, we've got Stoner and Trev with me as well. Guys, so Trev, I know you're not, I said we all love the Wiz, and Wizards are the home team, essentially, but for you, even if you're a Bulls fan, which is understandable, grew up in the 90s, everyone loved Jordan and the Bulls. But watching that game, did it just feel just like hopeless in the second half to you as it did to me?
Felt normal. I'm not surprised. I'm a little bit surprised because it was a 35-point lead.
Yeah, you got to be surprised.
But I'm also like, the Wiz are going to whiz. You bring in Wes Unseld for what? For what reason? Defense. Right? You let a team that has no Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard. Okay. Who else? I don't know who else.
Well, their other starters only played small minutes. Guys like Nicholas Batum, Zubats,
Eric Bledsoe,
Reggie Jackson.
Yeah. So
those are starters that weren't playing hardly in the second half because they were not playing well.
So I think we got complacent. We got cocky, which is not surprising because of who's on our team. Bradley Beal is very cocky. I don't care what you guys say or anybody says. He's cocky.
He is. Of course he
Kuzma is cocky as well. Harrell is cocky as well. So I think we got complacent. We brought in Wes Unseld for defense. We ain't been playing defense all year long. I'm sorry we haven't.
Well, at the beginning, when they were 10-3, they were
10-3 start. They were playing defense.
Now they're 24 and 25. So what'd you say at 10-3? We were 10-3 at one point. Now they're 24.
Too many victories. 23
and 25. 23 and 25. Clippers are now 24 and 25. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It's you either make some moves at the trade deadline that shake up the joint, or you make moves into the season with the head coach, because I know Wes Unseld is a family guy, a family name in DC because of his dad and this and that. He was really good in Denver, assistant because of his defense, whatever. But maybe being the head guy is too much for Wes Unseld Jr.
Can I jump in there?
You can jump in.
Dude. That's insane to think that it's time to get rid of Wes Unseld Jr. after
with less than 50 games. Yeah,
if he was a buffoon, that would be different. But he's not. I'm not saying he's the answer. I don't know that. We don't know that yet. But you have to give him time. You can't just give him, what are they, 23 and 25, 48 games and say, well, he can't do it.
That's pushing it. Okay,
it's pushing it.
Well, that's all right. So, all right, no, that's pushing it. But you got to make moves.
You said it. The YouTube comments gonna like you.
Good. Bring them on. You got to make a move at trade deadline, and you might have to start considering putting names in there that you weren't thinking about doing that at the beginning of the season, which is Spencer Dinwiddie, which is Bradley Beal, which is Montrezl Harrell, which maybe even be Kyle Kuzma. You never know. At this point, after last night, everybody is expendable. Everybody is available in my book.
Let's stick with the game first for Stoner here before we go to the
talk,
which no, it's fine because we're definitely going to bring that up.
We're definitely going there.
That is where this is going. So stick around for that. But let's just talk real quickly about this disaster of a game. I mean, I'm telling you, like at halftime, I'm thinking, hey, this is great. We're going to see a lot more of like Denny, and this is where Rui could potentially get some minutes because they're going to be up, and you're going to just want to make sure, like, hey, do all this, like, try out these different players that you're not going to. And then the lead just kept disappearing, and at no point in time, Stoner, during that second half, did I feel like Washington was ever going to take back control.
Right.
No.
What went wrong in that second half?
I think Trev hit on it. I mean, complacency is real in the NBA. Big leads disappear all the time. Every day there's a game where somebody blew a double-digit lead. It happens all the time because teams get complacent. That's just part of it. Now, 35-point leads, those don't happen every day, right? This is the second
time ever.
Yeah, this is the second worst.
Or second worst, yeah.
Second biggest point loss in history of somebody coming back is 35 points. So at least they're not the worst, but still, it's the second worst ever. But it spoke a lot when I'm watching the game. I think Wes Unseld Jr. did make a few just horrendous moves or non-moves. Every time they would come out of a timeout, it was the same guys who were getting run off the court. The Clippers scored 80 points in the second half. 80.
That's in 24 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, for any team to do that is insane. But for a Clippers team with guys like Amir Coffey, there's a guy named Scrub who is playing. Okay,
their star
Luke Kennard.
was Luke Kennard.
Trev, you're not singing off of Scrub.
I don't want no scrub. Scrub is a guy that can't get no dubs from me. Yeah, you can. You can come to Washington. And
you can get some dubs from Washington.
I looked at that guy's stats, and he scored 8 points yesterday, and he had scored a total of like 35 points the entire year. He only played like half the games because he was either inactive or just didn't get in the game. And he scored 8 in the second half. Insane. But he was not adjusting. And I kept seeing things like Wes Unseld Jr. was saying he was putting guys out there to combat their lineup, either their bigger lineup or their smaller lineup.
That's not how you coach.
When do we get a team where guys are matching up to our lineup?
Dictate.
That's exactly
proactive, not reactive.
That's why I'm saying maybe he's not fit for the head job.
Well,
and maybe he's only assistant level.
And,
I think
maybe that might
from
bear
his
out.
defensive side of the thinking, right? Like he's a defensive-minded coach. He's thinking, how am I going to defend against this lineup? And that's why he's being reactive. But you're right. We need a proactive lineup. We need the coach to realize that Spencer Dinwiddie was not hitting a shot to save his life.
And
you just needed a bucket, right? At that point, you just need to stop the bleeding, and you still have him in there. And I get that right now, as far as point guard is for Washington, he's really it, right? They're running Brad a lot at the point, and
that's
Neto's
by choice,
there.
Though. Because they have Neto and they have Holiday.
They have Neto and they have Holiday, but
So
they're
they
not
have
running
point
them.
guards.
So there's maybe a lack of confidence. Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
If they have worse defense than what we saw in the second half, I find that hard to believe. First off, but it's just like as a coach, you're right. Stop being so reactive, be proactive, and then realize like it's not just like who's on a heater, right? It's not like, hey, you've got Bertans out there who's finally hitting like 7 of 11 3-pointers. God. You got a Spencer Dinwiddie who's like 1 for 11.
Yeah. Right.
Got to take him out.
And they kept running in the last couple of minutes when they're trying to milk the clock and everything, they kept running the same play. Dinwiddie dribbles it over the line, just barely, stops, and gets it to Beal.
Yeah.
And then Beal's got to figure out what to do from there. Why do they keep running that same thing? That was last year. That was Scotty Brooks. ISO ball.
Telling you right now,
man. It was driving me insane. Why do you keep doing the same thing? So they're having over and backs because Bradley's trying to get the ball right there in that tight spot right there. You're right. And I think he hopefully learns a lot from that particular. But they were up 114 to 107 with 25 seconds left when Trez missed the second of his free throw. Clips go right down and get a dunk on a missed free throw because they don't want to foul him, right?
Right.
So now they're down 5. And then Kuzma gets fouled. He hits 1 of 2, just like Trez did. So they're only up 6 after that, right? Then Kennard hits that insane long logo three-pointer with 0 closeout from Beal on that. Beal kind of went towards him but didn't even do anything. Because and by the way, the last 2-minute report from the NBA, the official last 2-minute report, said that Justice Winslow took more than 5 seconds to get the ball in. They should have called a 5-second violation, and that play should have never happened. But it did. You can't go back and change it. But the officials blew that. They can call it on Washington. Well, so then they do the
idiot.
So then it's 115-112. They're up 3. And then Washington calls a timeout after that shot so they can bring it halfway. And what happens? Kuzma gets called for 5 seconds.
Like,
how do you not get a ball in 5 seconds?
It's the NBA, bro.
After you call the timeout. Like, there's a design. It's supposed to be a time. One, why bring the ball up in that regards?
Then, okay, yeah.
Why?
Well, you bring it up so that you have more room to run around. Run into the backcourt.
That's fair.
Run into the backcourt.
I was thinking of wasting some time coming from the other side of the court, but you're right. You get more space that way because that came into play at the end where they had to just heave the ball with 1.9 seconds.
Oh my god, I don't even want to talk about that one.
And that was
because they didn't have any timeouts. And
they didn't have any timeouts.
Bring the ball to half court. So when that happens, right? So then the Clippers, they call a timeout, right? So then they don't call a timeout, but they sub in some guys. They had 6 guys on the court, right? Well, coach looks over and he says, "Oh, they got their big fella in." I can't remember that big fella's name. It wasn't Zubac. It was the backup guy. He's got like 2 last names. I can't remember. Whatever. He's a nondescript player. But he sees them, so he says, "Oh, we got to get Trez in if they're going to have a big guy in," right? Well, they had 6 guys on the court. So that guy just kind of walks off, and the officials, Wes is like, that's a tech, because they got 6 guys on the court. Officials are like, just get him off the court. So he goes off the court. Now Trez is like, well, who am I supposed to be guarding then? Because they've got 5 guards out there, 5 smaller guys out there. Trez doesn't know who to guard, right? So adjust, coach. You see that their guy got off the court. Bring in somebody different. Bring in Denny. Bring in Rui. I don't know who's out on the court, so I could be just making guys up who are already out there. But he didn't adjust. Again, that's another coaching thing that when he saw the big guy leave, get Trez back off the court so that you can have some smaller guys, more mobile, agile guys out there. So then he hits that crazy shot. Dinwiddie tried to follow him. Beal tried to follow him, which, of course, you follow the guy so that he can't hit a 3.
Yes.
So he only gets 2 free throws. Goes off. But they fouled him during the shot, and he makes it, and then he makes a free throw, and they lose. And
Dinwiddie and Beal looking at the refs wondering why they weren't called prior to the shot going on.
Right, which they were trying to do. But they waited too long, though, as well. Yes. They waited too long.
Obvious stuff. They were like nudging, like you're just trying to get by somebody in the movie theater. Right? Didn't make a deliberate attempt, in my opinion, to make a clear and obvious, I'm fouling this guy so he can't get off a 3-point shot.
And then that official 2-minute report again, the last 2-minute report again, they said that Bradley Beal fouled Kennard before he went up for the shot. It should not have counted. The basket should not have counted. He should have gotten 2 free throws. But you can't go back in time.
All that's coulda, woulda, shoulda because before that happened,
It was insane.
They had a
It was insane.
35-point lead.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Should not have been there.
in that position
Not
in
even
the first
close.
place.
Now,
Now can we talk about how to fix this problem?
Let's move on and the woulda, coulda, shoulda.
mhm.
What they woulda, coulda, shoulda do right now. And
All right.
and you'll see it on the thumbnail. My personal opinion, I created the thumbnail. Trade them all. Trade them all. Washington, for the record, does not own their first round pick next season. Oklahoma City does. It is so got to keep that in mind. You can't just outright tank the season because you're not tanking for you're tanking for Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
to do something, you're gonna have to you're either in a buy or sell position. Now they're only 23 and 25, so I can hear an argument from Stoner right now where you just like buy and make a push for the playoffs and see what you can get out of this year. I just don't necessarily see it in the play that's happened. Remember, they started off 10-3. You take that away, and look how bad this team has been.
And they just lost to Houston, one of the worst teams in the NBA. They lost to Portland, who didn't have Dame and didn't have CJ McCollum. They should have waxed Portland. And then this particular game, this is all within the last 2 weeks. Something's going on. Something is going on either in that locker room or simply just on the court that they're just not gelling. It's not good. I can tell you that. So here's something that I tweeted yesterday after the game. And I try and stay away from these hyperboles, right? I try not to just lash out and say, fire Wes Unseld or trade them all. I try not to do that, right? I try to at least go through it in my mind, sleep on it, like I said. But that loss last night could be a franchise-altering loss. As in, if Bradley Beal was on the fence about whether he wanted to get out, that may have pushed him over the top. That may have said, you know what, that's it. I just can't keep doing this sort of thing and get embarrassed with a 35-point loss to a G League team, which is essentially what the Clippers had out there. Maybe, and that was going to change the entire trajectory. If you win that game and you head out on the road and everything's fine, everything's hunky-dory, you're not worried about stuff, and you just go on with the season and you don't make these major moves. But that loss last night may have triggered some things on both sides. It may have triggered some things with Tommy Shepard to say, you know what? We can't do this with Bradley Beal anymore. Or Bradley Beal saying, you know what? I can't do this anymore. That could have been a franchise-changing, forever loss last night. And that usually doesn't happen in the course of just one game. But that was devastating.
And I'm going to piggyback on that and said I think that game might have been the icing on the cake for that because of how the season has been going on and how his whole time in DC has been since he's been in the league. Bradley Beal, I think last night also shows you everybody that Bradley Beal is not the guy. He needs to be paired with the guy so they can be the guys, because building around Bradley Beal is not going to win you games. We've seen it happen already. They had John Wall with them. They weren't that great. I mean, they won probably more games than this, but they
had a couple of really good years. But you're right. You're right.
And then they go get Russell Westbrook. That didn't. You see where that happens. Now
the second half of the year was really good.
Yeah, that's because he got double doubles and triple doubles all the time. But
they went like 17-6 in their last 23.
But they were pretty impressive on the tail end. Yeah,
but in the end, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, you got almost swept out of the
playoffs.
It
does. So then this year you bring in Dinwiddie and Kuzma, and the results are the same. You bring in more firepower this year, and the results are the same. So I think this is showing you that Bradley Beal is not the guy to build around. I think he is a building block to another team that already has the guy on it. And I think that's what Bradley Beal deserves because he's been working his butt off his entire NBA career in DC, being the guy, and it's not bringing him success. It's barely getting him an all-star vote. So I think you blow it up. You move him and you start somewhere. find something else to build around or bring in somebody else to build around, whether it be like a free agency trade or it's already there on the roster. But I think like you said, Stoner, that loss was a franchise-altering loss, and I think it starts with Bradley Beal. I think it's time for
Stoner. You've been pretty staunch, and Brad wants to be here, and don't trade Bradley Beal. Franchise-altering. Does this change your opinion? Is it time to trade Bradley Beal while you have that ability?
This is going to sound really dumb, but I had a hard time sleeping last night or falling asleep last night because of that game.
Sports.
Right? That bothered me.
Why do they do this to us?
I know. Why do they
I
do
tried to
this
tell
us,
you
right?
this I tried to tell you this was coming.
Right. Now, I've always been very, like you said, don't trade Brad Beal. You trade him for a couple of number 1 draft picks, right? And what do you hope to get out of those number 1 draft picks? You hope to get a superstar, a guy who's good in the community, a guy who scores 30 points a game, a guy who's all NBA, a guy who, is a max type player, everything that you could want in a player.
Yeah.
You want him to turn into Bradley Beal. And my whole thing is, why are you trying to develop a guy? You already have him. But you're right. At some point, you've got to look at it and say, this isn't working. It didn't work well enough with John. We got rid of John. It didn't work well enough with Russ. We got rid of Russ. It's not working well with this new crew. Maybe it's time to get rid of Brad.
It's Beal.
And I hate that.
I think it's Beal.
And I hate that.
That's Stoner. I know that's pretty
I know
big.
you hate that.
I slept on it. I thought about it a lot, and I don't want to trade Beal. I don't want to.
I'm very proud of you. No, we don't want to trade Beal.
But I think they have to. And I just think
it really is a
have
to.
to.
I agree. I'm saying trade them all, and I do think that they need to trade Bradley Beal, but it is a need. It's not a want. I agree with Trevor. Right? They're trying to build around a guy, and he's a number 2, not a number 1. And it's unfortunate because you do like Bradley Beal. If you like the Washington Wizards,
that's what I'm saying.
He's your guy, just like John Wall was like your guy, and just like Gilbert Arenas was your guy. Like, so it's hard to give up those kind of players that you fall in love with. But one of the reasons why they need to really just blow this up, I mentioned the lack of pick for next year. The impact players you have, or developmental players that you have that are 25 and under. Can you list any of them? Think how many do you think are on the roster?
I mean, in our opinion, or are you talking about who is 25 and under?
In your opinion, 25 and under. So you're saying for the next these guys in the next couple of years, they're going to get into their peak, and these guys are going to be the ones to help Washington get into the playoffs. How many of those players exist on the current team?
I believe that there are 3. Now, I'm not saying there are 3 superstars.
No, again,
I'm saying there are 3 guys.
What I'm saying 3 guys that are going to help Washington in the next 3 years because they're going to hit their peak performance.
All right.
Who are those 3?
Maybe this is not no particular order, but Kyle Kuzma is one of those guys.
Kyle Kuzma is 26. He's over the age limit.
He can't fit. Okay.
Nope.
Corey Kispert is one of those guys. He's going to develop. He's already developed from game 1 to game whatever this is, game 50 or whatever it is. He has developed
48.
into a very good player, and he's going to continue to get better. He's one of those guys that you want. Number 2, and I guess this would be it. Maybe Denny's one of those guys, but maybe not, whatever. But Daniel Gafford is one of those guys. Okay? Gafford is 23 years old. And all he's done since he's been in the NIBA is get better and better and better. And he's going to continue to get better. And you don't find rim protectors very easily. So he's one of those guys you absolutely have to hold on to. And he can't be traded anyway. But with the whole contract, with the way he was traded last year, it's one of those deals that He's the only guy on the roster that
Pretty
can't
much
because
can't
of NBA rules.
officially can't be traded yet.
Officially can't be. Anybody else can be. So that's it. I don't put Rui in there. I am not a Rui guy. I think Rui is a decent player. I think he's a Jag.
I really wanted to see more from him last season. I really thought like last season was going to be, and he's just so inconsistent.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, right? So one of my favorites, I mentioned I'm an Oklahoma City fan. Their original big three. Out of that big three, Jeff Green was my guy, and he's another one that's just he. You want to love him, and there's some games where he looks great and he looks the part, but it's Jeff Green. And Rui kind of has that same feel where there's going to be some games where he's absolutely looks like, the dude. And then most games he's just a dude. He is 23. He's one of the ones down there. Thomas Bryant's 24. These are guys who see significant minutes for Washington right now. And Denny, you mentioned. They have Isaiah Todd, Joel Ayahi.
Joel Ayahi.
Cassius Winston.
Yeah.
Michigan
I mean,
State
those
guy.
guys are going back and forth to the G League.
G League, yeah.
Fine.
Aaron Holiday is on the bubble.
Yeah,
He's
now.
only relevant.
Neto,
He's only
Holiday,
relevant 'cause
Neto, KCP, Trez, all those guys are just okay. They can excel, but they're not.
And this is why you don't have anybody, if we're talking, if they keep this team, Brad is 28, KCP's 28, Spencer Dinwiddie's 28, Montrez is 28. These guys, if you're talking this team right now, and it's at its core, without a draft pick next year, they are probably still 2 to 3 years away from competing. Well, by that time, these guys are too old.
Yeah.
They're not going to be, they're not to say 31's too old, but I mean, realistically, when you're talking, you're looking at NBA years, that's going to
blow it up.
It's time. That's why now is the time to blow it up. You're going to have to get rid of Beal. You're going to have to get rid of Spencer Dinwiddie, who just hasn't been working out here, regardless of with Beal or not Beal.
If you don't get rid of Beal, you're going to lose your coach before that, and you don't want Beal to be the reason why you lose your coach, because I do believe that might be a reason. Yeah, Scotty Brooks is gone. Because that's what I'm saying. Why are we playing Bradley? Why are they playing Bradley Beal as a 1 when that's not what he does? In college, he was off the ball spot shooter. He would attack if he wanted to, but he came off screens, and he's a Klay Thompson in college. He's not a 1. So why are you making him play the position of the guy when he's not the guy?
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to be LeBron James, right? Not
he can't even get an All-Star vote.
The point forward. Not everybody needs to be
this year, but you know what I mean? His numbers are there, but it's just
his numbers aren't there this year. His numbers have really
used to be.
Really declined, and I think a lot of that is that team isn't gelling, and I think that's one of those things that is when we were very excited for Wes Unseld Jr. to come in and be the coach, and I'm still excited for him to be the coach. I do think that this team can see a potential turnaround, which is why it's so hard to blow it up, because you blow it up, and unless you catch fire with a really good rookie, you're probably looking at a couple of bad years here, and coaches in the NBA aren't usually given a couple of bad years.
No.
And also Denver was a better defensive squad with Wes Unseld as assistant coach, because I just feel like the players that we have on the roster, I think he needs more defensive-minded players on the roster than offensive. Kyle Kuzma wants to score. Bradley Beal wants to score. Dinwiddie wants to get his. Harrell wants to get his, even though he's down low. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's looking to play both equally.
Yeah, Gafford and Denny are pretty much your regardless. Yeah, those are the ones who are like defensive oriented.
And Neto when he's in there, but he's
right.
Yeah, but he so rarely seeds the
Denver. He
shortened his bench, and so Holiday and Neto and Bertans are not getting any minutes in the last few games. But he still needs to shorten it some more, because he's like we talked about in that Denny video. He's got a glut of the same type of players. When you got Denny and Corey Kispert and Rui and KCP and Kuzma and Beal, they're all the same guy. They all play the same position.
Yes.
So you got to shorten your bench even more, whatever that is. He's got to figure it out. And Kuzma said after the game yesterday that they're still trying to figure out their roles and their rotation.
Which is
and
bad.
they're 48 games into the season, and they shouldn't be. Everybody should by now know exactly what they're supposed to do. Every game.
Yeah, at least definitely a better idea. So I okay, here's my hot take. I give Wes Unseld one more year in DC, and then he's out of there.
Well, I mean, it's all dependent upon. I mean, if they blow it all up, you're just gonna have to let them deal with it for a few years while they win 22 games a year.
True, because Tommy Shepard picked all those players, I guess. So
I mean, what are you gonna do when you've got 5 rookies and
maybe there's a disconnect between
coaching.
the head coach and the GM on free agency
what
and
kind
the
of players
roster.
they're looking for?
Yeah,
maybe
seriously. Because if you bring in a defensive minded coach, why the hell did you bring in Kuzma, Dinwiddie, KCP, and Harrell? Why?
Well,
because you're looking at GM's probably looking at overall talent and just thinking that the coach can get some defense out.
Or he was just, we got to get rid of Russ. Russ wants to go.
That was for
we got to get rid of him.
KC.
Whatever you can give me. Whatever you can give me, we'll just have to make it work.
Like THT.
But Dinwiddie was one that they targeted in free agency and picked up. And I think
they overpaid him.
Dinwiddie was Stoner's guy. Stoner really wanted Dinwiddie.
Yeah, I don't say this off that injury. I never trusted him.
I don't say this very often.
Mismanagement in the beginning.
I don't say this very often. I was wrong about Spencer Dinwiddie. I can admit it. And
it's okay,
and this is like, I'm not trying to brag. I'm not trying to brag, but I can usually tell on NBA players whether they're a baller or not. Okay. And I was
no, you cannot, bro.
Oh, I can.
You think Denny is a baller. You think Bertans is a baller, and you're way wrong.
I'm not saying that they're ballers.
He calls us out on the stats all the time.
What they're doing.
You said Denny was baller. You did say that.
Denny is a good piece to build with. Yes, he's 21 years old.
Just turned 21.
He's learning the game,
and I watched him
steadily got better and better.
I watched him get deboed against, I don't know, maybe it wasn't, I don't know who it was against, but he was not playing very good defense at all. He was getting worked.
They all looked pretty lost in that 35-point loss.
As far as
the points, Wes, as far as keeping Wes as the coach,
yeah, you keep him.
I think, yes, you absolutely keep him. There's no brainer to keep him here. You're saying whether or not he gets one more year. I think if they pull in another squad, blow it up, and I think Starter's right, they keep him for a couple of years in that regards. But you also probably keep him if that squad starts to show promise. Now, if they have another game where they lose a 35-point lead, then it's going to
20 or higher.
Really hard to defend him as staying on for the Washington Wizards. We'll have to see whether or not what Washington's going to do. What are the Wiz going to do? Let us know what you think in the comments. It was just last week, guys. We did a video, Denny for Jeremy Grant. I think we're all in agreement. That's not the answer right now.
Nah. You're going to add Beal and everybody to that list.
You're going to have to trade a lot more away to fix this team. And let us know what you think that they need to do to fix, and what was your thoughts of that horrendous loss.
Really bad. It's
just
really bad.
Awful. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel as well. Imagine what, Trev?
If PG and Kawhi were playing.
Oh.
Well, they wouldn't have been up 35.
That's what and that's another thing they need to look at. Like,
might have been down 35.
Like the Lakers. We're losing this to teams that are below, like Houston, Portland, LA Clippers without their all-stars. And we're losing to teams like this with our superstars. We need more. We ain't got.
Well, then you're also losing to the Celtics by 30. But what's crazy is, remember on MLK Day, they waxed the Sixers. Waxed them.
It's the NBA, man.
It's right. It's the NBA. So there's sometimes players take the game off. Tobias Harris took that game off. I'm convinced of it. He had like 7 points and fouled out. He took
they
the game
probably all
off.
did because it was the Wizards. They probably all did, honestly.
And they were
They
probably
wanted
partying
the
somewhere in
Monday
DC.
off. They were drinking out Sunday night.
Yeah.
Took the game off. Who knows what really happened? What we know happened just this week for the Wiz was awful, unacceptable. You can't have a 35-point lead and lose the game. You just can't. Let us know
Try
again
and
what you
find
think
Bradley
as
Beal's
far
college
as
roster, but-
whether or not, what pieces should they trade and what should they be looking for in return. We didn't really get to that. We'll have to get to that in another episode. But until next time,
Give me a 10-day, Wes. Give me a 10-day.
be a fan.